2023 is coming to an end, so I wanted to make this kind of a recap video of the stuff that I've actually tested this year, and some of the stuff I kept. I made a separate videos that I'm gonna link. Some of the stuff I never talked about, but I did use it. So in this video, I'm just gonna talk about this stuff really quickly. First up, this little thing. It's a 1TB AngelBird card. I remember testing it. I was actually thinking if I'm gonna use it in my workflow or not, or how should I use it in my workflow. I ended up getting 2 of these, and I always keep them in a second slot on my Sony A7R V cameras as my kind of backup cards. I record all the RAW files on them, so on that 1TB card I can fit like between 4 to 8 weddings, and I kind of never delete them. It's my backup. So after a couple weddings, when the card is filled, I put it in the recorder, I see which weddings I already delivered, I delete them from that card, and then I put it back. I use the date folder management on the card, so it's really easy to find the weddings that I already delivered and just delete them. Speaking of cameras, Sony came up with a bunch of cameras this year. I actually have been using last year's Sony A7R Vs. I did purchase 2 of these in April this year, and I've shot all of my weddings on this cameras. And surprisingly, my favorite feature is using APS-C mode, because I'm shooting medium RAWs that are 26 megapixels, and then I turn the camera into crop mode when I need the extra reach, which also gives me 26 megapixels files, and it's just very convenient when using prime lenses like I do. I made multiple videos on this camera, but yeah, this was my go-to this year. I do not know what's going to be my go-to cameras next year, because late this year we got Sony A9 III. This is outstanding camera. It's a 24 megapixel global shutter camera, which is extremely fast. There's no bending. You can shoot up to 180,000 of a second shutter speeds with no rolling shutter, nothing like that. And then you can sync with flash with whatever shutter speed you want. So it's pretty outstanding camera. And also from my initial tests, the image quality is amazing. So I'm truly considering switching to these cameras for the next year. I do need to make more tests with it since I finally got my review unit. So I'm gonna shoot way more stuff in upcoming days and weeks with this camera. Stay tuned if you want to see the videos. But so far I have no decision yet. I don't know if I'm gonna switch or not, so this is yet to be determined. Sony also introduced A7C Mark II and A7C-R this year. Both camera I have tested and I freaking love them. Both are full frame. A7C II is 33 megapixels just like A7 IV, and A7C-R is 61 megapixels just like A7R V. Those are, you can say, light versions of the A7 IV and A7 R5. They're compact, they have just one card slot, they have smaller viewfinder, worse ergonomics, there's no joystick and stuff like that. So they're just like smaller light versions, but performance wise they're like as good as the big boys. I myself was planning to get A7C Mark II for my personal photos, but I actually ended up purchasing Sony RX1R Mark II. This is a very old camera. I bought it from Taylor Jackson, and yeah, I don't need A7C Mark II anymore because I have this one. I really love how small and compact this camera is, and it became my everyday carry since I bought this. The only downside is the batteries and the battery life, and like the performance obviously is not even close to A7C series, but I found a solution from the battery thing. I actually bought this Patona charger. It's a dual battery charger. You can see it's holding 2 batteries and it's USB-C powered. So I actually keep it in my backpack connected to the power bank, which is constantly charging the batteries. This way, whenever the battery dies in my RX1, I have a fresh one in my backpack. By the way, all of the photos that you are seeing, that I'm showing in this video, are edited with my Magic Cadabra preset, and I added 2 new presets this year to the pack, Flat Magic and a Silver Soft Black and White. These are presets that I use for all of my work, and I only have one pack that gets updated whenever I come up with something new. So if you want to check out my presets, if you want to support Magic, make sure to check the link in the description. Thank you. Speaking of cameras, I also tested Sony ZV-E1 and Sony A6700 this year, but none of these cameras are actually for me. ZV-E1 is a great full-frame video camera. It would be great for recording videos like this, but I already use Sony A7S III, and ZV-E1, while having some better features than Sony A7S III, you know, I don't think I would actually benefit from the change, and I really like the Sony A7S III form factor, which is the same form factor as my Sony A7 series, which I'm very familiar with. So it's a great camera for me. ZV-E1 though gets my recommendation as like Sony top vlogging camera, you know, like this content creation camera. The same goes with Sony A6700. It's an APS-C camera. I don't need APS-C camera. I tested it actually twice. So first I tested it before the release. I had it at one of my weddings in Italy, but then last month I actually traveled to Florence with this camera. I shot some more wedding portraits with it. Like performance-wise, again, it's a great camera. It's like top of the top what Sony has to offer. It's actually a APS-C version of Sony A7R V in terms of the performance. So it's great, but for me, I just don't need APS-C camera in my lineup. And now let's move a smooth transition to the lenses. I actually tested it out with a lens that I have not showed you. It's a TTartisan 35mm f1.8 APS-C autofocus lens, and I actually got 2 units from TTartisan. The first piece that I got from them, they told me there's a flaw in terms of the design and it does create more flare than it's supposed to, and actually I tested it out and it has a great flare, so I'm keeping this one. They sent me the second one, which is supposed to be better. It also does flare, which I personally like, but you know, the best part about this lens that it's just so affordable. So if you are APS-C person and you don't own a 35mm prime lens yet, this one gets my recommendation. It's way better than the old Sony 35-1.8 for APS-C, to be honest. I did receive one more lens from TTartisan, which was this bubbly effect lens. Although this one, 100mm, it's kind of not my focal length, so I enjoyed the results, but I didn't enjoy the process of shooting with it because 100mm, it's just too far. But if you are 85mm, 135mm lover and you're shooting a lot of these dreamy portraits, I highly recommend testing this one because A, it's super cheap, B, it gets you amazing effects in terms of like this chaotic bubbly bokeh. Let's stay in the topic of cheap lenses. There's one more I have been testing this time for full frame. It's a Viltrox 20mm f2.8, and I have a problem with Viltrox. Every time they send me something, there is something not working. I did use some of their prime lenses before and they were not focusing correctly. This one is amazing, although it has a problem when I'm filming with it with active stabilization on my A7S III. It does this kind of wobbly effect. So every time I'm being sent like one of these lenses, I'm not that impressed. But considering the price point, I can live with that wobbly effect. And in terms of quality, this lens is pretty amazing. I did use it to a bunch of B-rolls. Whenever I needed something wider than my 24mm, I used this Viltrox lens. So for those of you looking for a wide angle lens, super cheap lens, and you want to try out maybe 20mm. This one, apart from the active stabilization issue, it's a great one. Well, let's move to the other side of the spectrum. I also tested a couple third-party lenses that are not cheap, that are actually expensive. One of them being this Meyer Optic Görlitz Biotar lens. It's a re-edition of the old Zeiss Biotar lens that I have the original version of, and it's freaking amazing. It's, first of all, the build quality is top notch. You're taking this out of the box, which, by the way, the box is also amazing. You feel very premium treatment from this company. These lenses are handmade, and yeah, handmade in Germany. That's obviously says something. So this is 58mm f1.5. I did not make a full review on this lens, but I did shoot with that lens and a bunch of videos. You can see some of the photos now on the screen. So the best part of this lens, a part of the design and everything, is the bokeh. Like it has this vintage character to it. It has this swirly bokeh, creates this really nice vintage look while keeping really good color rendition and sharpness in the center of the frame. So that's way better than the original size Biotar that I have that is just less sharp and the colors are slightly off. But the biggest flaw of the new one is sadly the flare. It's ridiculous. It's this rainbow kind of thing happening in the frame when you're shooting against the sun. I'm guessing this is some kind of coating they use. So that's my biggest issue with the lens. If you don't care about the flare and so on and you like the vintage characteristic, it's definitely great, but it is quite expensive. Sony also came up with a bunch of lenses this year, and there's one in particular that I was personally considering getting, and it was a Sony 50mm f1.4 G Master. This is unreal lens, super compact, super sharp, super fast, like everything about this lens is just perfect. The biggest question, and probably the most popular question people are asking, the difference between that 51.4 G Master and a 51.2 G Master. In my opinion, they're both amazing and you will not go wrong with either of them. 51.2 will get you a slight edge in terms of look, when shooting wide open, that extra separation from the background, but then 1.4 is smaller. And that's what it comes down to, actually. Do you prefer to have that pop when shooting wide open, or do you prefer to have more compact? And let's be real here. When talking about that pop when shooting wide open, your clients, they will never see the difference between those two. It's only for your visual pleasure. Let's talk about weird lenses now, tilt lenses actually. I did shot with two tilt lenses this year. One is a TTartisan 51.4 and one was Ostrohori 51.4, kind of a free float tilt. Both are actually amazing and give you like really cool, like dreamy effects, and I enjoyed shooting both of these. But for my wedding work, I actually went back to the good old 24mm tilt shift from Canon on adapter because I just liked 24mm with tilt effect more. That's the simple reason for that. Last lens I want to talk about is this Sirui anamorphic. I was like looking forward to finally test out 50mm anamorphic lens after enjoying using 35 anamorphic before, but I was hoping maybe 50 will get me nicer image, better background blur and so on, and I was right about that actually. I love that 50mm. I prefer it over 35, and the new version, Saturn version, is super small, super compact, and like amazing. Plus, that anamorphic flare is to die for, and it does come with an option to choose either blue flare or neutral flare. I prefer the neutral flare because it can give you natural color of the light in the flare, and that's something I really enjoyed. I can't wait to shoot more with this lens this year. Also, throughout 2023, I used extensively this Brevite backpack. This was not my wedding backpack, but this is like my personal backpack for traveling with camera gear. So look at this, it's red, it looks funky, and it holds up to 3 cameras. I was actually carrying 3 cameras here when I was traveling in New York, Tokyo, like wherever I went and I was not shooting wedding, I just used this backpack and I freaking love it. One accessory that many of you asked in the comments is this thing. So you've seen me multiple times recording what I see on the screen of my camera on my iPhone. And to do this, I use this Accsoon SeeMo recorder. This is kind of this HDMI recorder / adapter because you need to slap your phone here, connect this thing using HDMI to your camera, and then connect with the USB lightning cable to your iPhone, and then use the built-in app to record what you see on your screen. This is the best because previous to that I was using a big recorders that was just overkill from just recording the screen, which is what I do with it. And this one is small, it's tiny, it has replaceable batteries, and it's great. Highly recommend if you're looking for a tool to record your camera screen. Oh, and the one last cool thing that I tried this year and I've been using quite a lot for some of my B-rolls, you've probably seen it, is this fog machine. So this is, it's called LensGO Fog Machine, and look at this. It creates this epic atmosphere fog. It's amazing. So first of all, I use it for a bunch of the B-rolls in some of my videos, but also I did use it on one outdoor portrait shoot with my wife, and it was really cool, like especially when shooting backlit and we were, you know, using that fog in between my wife and the light coming, and you can see this like shapes of light coming in. Also, by the way, on this shoot I was testing the old 85mm Sony planar Carl Zeiss lens that was made for DSLR cameras, but I don't know, I wasn't impressed with this one. Maybe because it's an 85mm lens, maybe not. Maybe I'll make a video on that, maybe not, I don't know. But yeah, that's what I used for these photos. Yeah, I think that's all. 2023 was a blast. I can't wait to see what 2024 has to offer in terms of like camera and equipment and gear. If you have any recommendations, what you want me to try and check out, what lenses, cameras, and so on, let me know down in the comments. And yeah, have a great transition to 2024. Enjoy your evening. Enjoy the last day of 2023. And I see you guys next year. Ciao.